Welcome back everybody to another one of my time-lapse model build videos, and in this one we're going to be looking at the building of my Tamiya 1/48 scale Meteor F1. Now this is the early style of the Meteor. It had the, I want to call it the earlier stubbier canopy. Later on they had more of the typical fighter jet canopy that you'd be used to seeing on modern fighters, or especially the 1950s, 1960s fighters, whereas the canopy on this this early F1, very reminiscent of what you'd see kind of in a World War II aircraft style canopy. So it is an earlier style, so some people need to be aware of that. I did do a full model review of this kit. You can see a link up in the corner. Or one of the corners. So if you do want to take a look at what this kit looked like, take a look at that. It does show you the ins and outs of the kit as well as what to expect, as it is, like I said, different than what you would expect for a later Meteor kit. Or version of the Meteor. Now, the kit itself went together extremely easily. It's typical Tamiya. As you'll see near the end, I had a little bit of issues with the decals. Not quite sure what happened there. Might have just been age or just the way the kit was stored. I did buy this kit used a number of years ago, so it might have just been the way the previous owner stored the decals. I don't know. But it is what it is. Other than that, the only criticism I'd have with this kit, the nose weight. There's a weight, you'll see it goes in just behind the cockpit and the forward fuselage, and it is just enough to work. I find it tends, the slightest jostle of the kit will cause it to tail sit. So it's just perfectly balanced on those mains, and it should be just a little bit more nose weight. And if I'd known that, I'd go back and do it. So if you are going to build this, if you haven't built it yet, please add a little bit more weight up in the nose there. Just a couple of more grams or an ounce or two will be enough to keep that nose down. The gear is nice and sturdy, so there's no issue of over stressing that. But you learn. That's why I'm doing this, so other people can learn from my mistakes. So without further ado, let's get swung over. Let's watch the building of this kit. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And as usual with these aircraft models, I get started with the cockpit. Unusual with aircraft models in this kit, the cockpit drops into place later on in the build, and then there's sort of an upper fuselage cover that goes in place and unlocks everything in. And I feel like this has got to do with the fact that Tamiya later released a F3 version, and I'm assuming the cockpit and that upper fuselage insert was different, and this just allowed them to use the same basic fuselage mold for the two different versions instead of having to retool the entire fuselage section. But I don't have the F3, so I'm just guessing here, but you will see I complete the cockpit, and then it kind of gets put aside and doesn't get dropped in until a little later in the build. here, you see me starting the assembly of those two engines. They're one of the jewels of the kit. They're very, very beautifully detailed, turn out really good with a bit of work. You do have to install them in the engine bays, as you see them in the intakes, the front of the engines, you can see through the intakes, and the tailpipes actually mount to the back end of the engine. That being said, you probably could do a little bit of modification to the kit and sort of use bits and pieces to assemble the front face and the rear exhaust tube without having to put the whole engine in. But in reality, it's not hard to assemble it, and you just have to paint the two ends instead of doing all the detailing paint. Speaking of detailing paint, you'll see I actually do quite a bit of effort on it. I paint the whole thing in Alclad, and then I do the burner cans in a separate shade of Alclad, and then I go ahead and do some aluminum and some black and some jet exhaust. So there's quite a bit of different colors that went into that, and you can really see that effort at the end when you see a finished engine. So here you see me doing a bit of puttying. Those forward, sort of the front faces of the intakes didn't fit the best. There was some significant stepping on the leading edge of the wing, as well as that intersection between the nacelle front and the rest of the nacelle. So quite a bit of sanding and puttying was needed to kind of blend all that together. Don't know if that's just a kit issue or if it was something the way I put it together. But, I mean, a little bit of puttying, a little bit of sanding, as well as that rear fuselage wing joint. But at the end of the day, it looked really good, and you can't really tell that I had to do any sanding at the end. So just a quick, kind of as we can see with the video, I'm kind of in the midpoint of the build here, and I want to do a quick update on kind of where I am on things. So you've seen me get to this point. I've still got a little bit of cleanup to do with some seams, but I'm getting very close to the point where I will be doing a coat of primer and doing the final prep for paint. And I have a decision to make. And I've been mulling this over off and on as I'm putting the kit together, kind of figuring out what the plan's going to be. So right off the bat, the engines are mounted. The exhausts I'm going to glue in after because they're very easy to just slide in and seat into place. Kind of, sort of, maybe. I say that, and of course now I can't actually get... Well, maybe that's how it fits.
anyways, there we go. So that one fits properly. So this side just being uber difficult to seat properly. But anyways, there we go. So simply because I can install these after the fact, I'm going to. It saves me from having to mask and deal with that. But what I have to figure out is what I want to do with the engines. And I think at the beginning of this build I had mentioned I kind of wanted to use the clear parts. But looking at this kit, I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to see, so you can see what I can see. So that's what it looks like with the engine in place. And looking like that, it doesn't look that bad. But you start looking on the side and there's openings. That right there is hideous. That looks hideous. You know, being able to just see that looks hideous. A lot of that internal structure that you would see inside a wing, you don't see with the engine open. Now you need to put the engine in place. I was debating on whether to display an engine beside it and building a stand. The issue is when you look down the intake, you have to be able to see that engine. Otherwise it'll just be a big hollow opening inside the cowling, which is going to look really weird. So the engine has to be in place in order to kind of fill that space inside the wing. But if I use the clear covers, you're going to see the engine, but it's going to look horrible. And if I display it with, for example, an engine cowling, you know, on the wing beside it, it's still going to look horrible because you can't see anything. And then the other idea I had was to say put the clear cowling in place and then, you know, make a patch, you know, a little squiggly area with some putty, and when I paint you'd have a little window you could see down and see the engine. But that doesn't look realistic. And it's going to look very toy-like. And I don't necessarily want my models to look toy-like. I want them to look, you know, representing an actual aircraft. So I was like, well, what if I put the cowlings in place and I can pop the cowling off, you know, if I want to show somebody the engine? Well, the cowling fit is actually extremely bad. They don't fit the way they're supposed to. I mean, I'm actually fitting the pin inside the little hole. There's massive gaps on the back. They're sinking in the front. They're misaligned. It's going to take a lot of effort for me to get these to fit nicely for me to even be able to paint and make it look good. So I don't even know how I'm going to pull this off at this point. I hate to do it, but I think I'm just going to have to bury the... After all the work I went in to get those engines painted up and outclad and weathered and everything else, I'm just going to have to take some pictures of them and then bury them in the wing. I really, really, really want to build it with the cowlings just sitting in place, and I might still go that route and just be able to pop the cowlings off whenever I want to show off the inside. But I mean, there are some bad fitting problems that I have to contend with, and I don't know whether that is something that I really want in the long run. So I just don't know. Like that I guess I could live with. You know what I mean? If it was painted up and weathered properly, and I could live with that and then just show them off when I went, oh yeah, look, you can pop the cowlings off and, you know, there's an engine inside. Hey, look at that. And then try to put the engine back on. But again, it feels very toy-like. And I don't necessarily know if I want to go that toy-like route. We'll see. Anyways, I just wanted to get that off my chest to make sure that if you do happen to see me going in a direction that I hadn't initially talked about, it's not a surprise to anybody out there as to why I'm doing that. But anyways, as I said, at this point, I have my little sponge wheel well covers made for both sides. I'm going to make one for the nose gear here in a little while, so it'll have another square that I can jam down in there. Possibly, you know what, considering how easy this is, I might just mask it with some masking tape and stuff some Kleenex down inside of it. But there's that, and then there's the intakes, which again, I might just put a foam, cut a circle of sponge and jam in there. And then the cockpit will go on, and then I will get the exterior primer done and get this thing painted. And that will be the vast majority of the work on this complete. So very happy with where I am with this. Looks good. It's gonna be pretty cool. Painted up in the prototype scheme, sitting on my shelf. So that's the mid-build point of that Meteor. So keep watching, and you get to see where I go next.
Here you can see me starting to assemble the landing gear. This kit has really beefy landing gear on it. I mean, the real airplane did as well. It was designed to fly off of unprepared and grass fields, you know, as per kind of the way the RAF was at the time in the World War II 1940s era. But the kit itself still has that nice big beefy gear, and with a little bit of effort, you can actually assemble the kit and put the gear in later, which is what I do, and that allows me to get in there and get the painting done, and then I just add the gear at the very end when I need it. So yeah, very easily to assemble. A little bit difficult to paint. You'll see the landing gear actually has a two-tone paint scheme. Took a bit of masking, which, like I said, you'll see near the end. But other than that, the gear itself, relatively easy to build, is easy to assemble and pop in, and nice and strong. And here I start the painting process, and as I mentioned, you'll see there I just masked off the canopy as well as those main gears so that the splash guards get the paint, and you'll see the bottom of it gets a yellow paint, which is sort of the British prototype paint color. All their prototypes had that yellow belly on the first version of the first couple of prototypes. Not sure the reasoning behind that. I'm assuming it just makes the aircraft easier to spot when it's in the air for filming or tracking purposes. But that's what I went with. And you'll also see, like I said, the splash guards get the same color yellow. And then I went with the camo. It's the sort of early World War II RAF dark green and earth brown. And I use the usual kind of putty sausages technique to get a nice soft feathered edge between the two colors. And then I use masking tape to get a hard line between the yellow and the upper camo. So that went together and very easily to get the paint done. And then I go ahead and get it glossed.
We are at the midpoint of the build. Well, not really the midpoint, a little bit past the midpoint, but it's a big step, and I wanted to have a quick talk before I go any farther. So as you've seen, the aircraft has been painted, it has been gloss coated, and I got the vast majority of the masking off. So at this point, I'm ready to start the decals. And again, this one doesn't have a lot of decals on it. It's a relatively small sheet, just the main markings, the aircraft code, and the prototype P, which will go in the rear fuselage. And then I can start, I'm going to do a little bit of weathering on it. I'm going to give it an overall black wash. I'm going to give a little bit of some sort of soot behind the cannons. I'm assuming this would have been used for sort of testing and whatnot, so you would have seen a little bit of soot coming off of there. I'm going to go through and add a little bit of hydraulic oil leaks and stuff like that, coming from the gear doors and all that kind of stuff. Just make it look a little bit dirty. You know, like it's a prototype that's been, you know, flown hard and put away wet, so to speak. Not necessarily like rollout condition. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to see kind of what the life of this jet was. Was it used for a long period of time, or was it only for a few months and it crashed, or was it retired or scrapped? So I got to do some research, see how long it lasted. If this thing lasted for a number of months, it was probably pretty dirty near the end of it. So I'm going to kind of feel it out, see what I'm going to do, but I do want to dirty it up a little bit. And then I can start a flat coat. I'm going to give it an all over flat coat, and then I can start doing some final assembly and getting it all put together. So I'm very excited to have that. It's never really got into this kind of era of British jets before, so it's an interesting build, and I'm liking where it's going, so stay tuned.
So I'm not sure how much it comes up over the video here when I have it sped up, but I was having some serious issues with these decals. I was fighting them the whole time. They kept trying to shatter, break. Some of them just the minute they came out of the water, they just all broken, like especially the wing walks. They were just into a whole bunch of little pieces, and I had to piece it all back together. Near the end, I end up using some of the micro scale liquid decal film. I should have done it earlier on in the build and did the whole sheet, but I wasn't expecting as much of a issue as I was. So some areas, especially with the black ink, on the and the tail flashes, just really difficult to get them to lay down flat without breaking, but bit of effort, bit of some work. It didn't look too bad at the end.
Here we are with the Meteor, and as you've seen, it is basically done. Painting is done, glossing is done, the decals were done. I'm going to go ahead and give it just a very quick hit with the black wash. I kind of want to keep it looking clean, but I also want to make it look used. So I am going to go ahead and do a little bit of black wash on this. And then, yeah, I'm not going to do too... I mean, I want to weather it. I want to give it some dirt. I want to make it look like it's been used. I don't want to make it look like it's been in combat. So I'm not going to do a lot of smearing on it in terms of, like, you know, gun blast and that kind of stuff. I'm just going to give it an overall hit with the black wash just to make it pop. I'm going to wipe most of it off, and then I'm going to go forward, and we'll see how it turns out. I have a look in my mind that I want. We'll see how close I can get to it in practice. I'm going to get myself a new section of lint-free rag to wipe with, just so I can try to get the most of it off as I can on this one. Like I said, I want, I thought I was stuck. I want it more or less clean, but I want a little bit of weathering. So I got the dirty rag here. I'm going to use to put it on, and then a clean rag to wipe most of it off. So let's get the weathering done on my Meteor.
And then as we roll right along towards the end of this kit, you'll see I get those the landing gears installed, the wheels. I do a little bit of light weathering along the landing gear itself. I get the speed brakes. I get all the gear doors, all that kind of stuff all installed. And then I go ahead and do some of the, well, after the flat coat, I get some of the smaller things done, antennas and whatnot glued on, and get the lights and stuff inside, and get the navigation lights painted on the wingtips. And that gets me towards the end of the aircraft.
that is it, everybody. The 1/48 scale Tamiya Meteor F.1 is complete. It is very, very finely balanced on those main gears. It doesn't take much to make a tail sit. Would have been nice if there was just a hair more weight in it, but overall turned out well. I still have that ability to pop the cowling, take a look at that engine, which is an option I kind of wanted to go for. Overall, a little disappointed with the way the decals turned out. Never really had an issue with Tamiya decals before this, but very happy with how it stays. So take a quick look at some of the shots I took in the final photo shoot of this model, and we're going to wrap this video up. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.seans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.